Whew, I'm trying to tell you, man. When it comes to breeding ball pythons, sometimes the plan doesn't always work. But in this video, it's a follow-up for part one of the 5 mistakes that are killing your ball python breeding projects. I'm hoping that I won't spend as much time as I did on the first subject in this video. So stick around and find out. Hey, how's it going, guys? It's Paul with Spheric Reptiles, and thank you so much for tuning in to part 2 of the 5 mistakes that are killing your ball python breeding projects. And I mean, it's just like nothing's ever overnight. It's a slow, steady death. So at some point, if you start off on the wrong path, you end up moving down a pathway that you can't return from. And ultimately, it can be so discouraging that it gets you out of the hobby altogether, or at least from thinking of breeding. And, you know, like I said before, all these videos are to help you. So if you choose to breed ball pythons, it's not rocket science. There's been a lot of people that have done it. And hopefully what I'm hoping is that the videos that we're making here as Spheric Reptiles on the subject of ball pythons are going to help you move forward if you choose to breed your ball pythons and you end up with some healthy babies, right? Or healthy clutches. In part 1, I spent a lot of time talking about your breeding stock. And I feel like if we look at a food pyramid, remember those from school, you know, you got the big bottom and a very small top, you know. If we looked at a food pyramid or a ball python breeding pyramid, your breeding stock is your life's blood, right? So in that video, if you haven't watched it, which the video is right here, this is part 2, I really discuss buying your males for your power and all your diversity, and your females as your foundation for your longevity of your breeding projects. You really want to try to get, just to recap that video, you really want to try to get the healthiest, best examples of the animals that you can first. I mean, you might have to continually reinvest, but when we're talking about just breeding ball pythons, you want to make sure that you get a male that can suit, you know, several different females, as well as the females that you won't have to continually buy and replace. So that's one of the mistakes we made, and I didn't say that in the previous videos, is when we first started buying ball pythons, one of the first mistakes I made was I went out and I bought specific animals for a specific project without thinking about the growth into other projects. So since we've restructured, we've changed up some of our animals, we've sold some of our animals, we've picked up other animals, but now I feel like for the projects that we have moving forward, that we've thought ahead enough. So I'm saying think ahead like 3 years at a time. I think because at a 3-year time frame, that gives you enough time to actually produce what you want and decide if you want to either, you know, have an exit strategy, if you want to reinvest, or you want to stay the same. I think that's important, but that's a business plan talk, and that's not what this is about. So in part 2, because that was a long-winded speech about the other video, which you probably already watched. In part 2, what I'll be discussing is raising your animals up, which is the second thing from foundations, and then choosing your breeding projects. I'm going to say that that's number 3 on the list for the total project moving from the foundation. And then so we're talking about raising your animals up and then choosing your breeding projects, because I think you got to have that husbandry thing down, like how you feed before you ever think about breeding, which I know in previous videos, and I know it makes sense to just really focus on your breeding projects first, but if you don't know how to take care of the animals, that's not going to help you at all. So after you've established that you can raise your animals up and then you've already chosen your projects, then the next thing would be successful pairings and clutches, right? So that's 2 separate things. You have to be able to successfully pair, and then you have to be able to produce those clutches. So I'll be discussing all of that in this video, and the very last thing would be marketing and selling your ball pythons, because remember, you're not building a collection, you're building a project. So if you want to build a collection, then you should buy a variety of animals and maybe not even breed them, because then you won't have to deal with the headaches that come, because there are some headaches, and there's more time. I'm not going to say it's headaches because I enjoy it. Maybe I enjoy headaches too, but it is more time to actually breed your ball pythons and raising them up and feeding them and doing all this other stuff. It's that extra level that if you're trying to just build a collection, then just go ahead and buy your animals and just have a collection. I'm really interested in what you think about the video and if you like the video, because I want to only put out content that's pertinent to what is helpful to you. We see bad things here all the time. I try to share them with you because that's what I feel like the best thing to do is to be candid. But hey, just watch the video and let me know what you think. Number 2, raising the animals to sexual maturity. So a lot of the things that I hear is my ball python isn't eating, how fast do they grow, and when can my female breed? No, when can my female ball python breed? I think those are all relevant questions which boil down to feeding. So inevitably, this is what, whenever I get to talking to a lot of new breeders, this is what happens. Either they're overfeeding or they're not feeding enough. So that's why I really stress, getting to where you're weighing your snakes every month so you can see if that is a linear growth curve. And after a while, you'll kind of have an average for your ball pythons. And you can tell from their physical characteristics if they're really fat. Like if you hold them and they're really mushy and kind of soft, then you know that you're overfeeding them. Now, if you underfeed them and you feel them, and it seems like you can feel their spine a little bit more, it looks like their eyes aren't as bright, then that you might be underfeeding them. But this is what the thing is when you're thinking about it. So when you get your juveniles, that's when you have to establish them on a feeding schedule, right? So getting them on food to where they eat all the time. You feed them every 5 to 7 days. And you can speed that up and slow that down depending on how, as a clutch, they're growing. So some clutches grow faster than others and some grow slower. Well, if your animals are feeding consistently, they should be gaining so much weight. I got a video on that right here so that you can actually track your ball python weights. That's one video that we have. Of course, we have others. But as you move from hatchling to juvenile, then now this is the stage where you actually want to focus in and establish them on what type of food they'll be eating so that you can grow them accordingly. So if you're breeding a male, you still have some flexibility as to whether you can feed a mouse or at this stage a rat pup. But as you transition that female from a hatchling to a juvenile, then you would want to start making sure that she's on rat pups. And by the end of that stage, as she goes into the subadult phase, then you want her at least on wean rats at that point, because at that point, she needs more bone marrow, she needs more liquid. Remember, that female has to get up to 1,500 grams to reach sexual maturity, and that male only has to get up to around 800 to 1,000 grams to be a full-grown adult. So we're looking at a male at around 700 grams to realistically breed him, but I would say don't, just go ahead and wait until that male is about like 1,000 grams. I think that's safe, and for a lot of different reasons, because when and if it stops eating, then that could be an issue when it comes to your breeding program. So you want to give that male a chance to go through the breeding for your season without a detriment to its overall health. So as you get into those subadult phases, that's when you're developing those fat reserves so that in the case of that male can continue to thrive. And that female needs those fat reserves because as she gets to the end of her subadult phase, she'll start developing follicles, which transitions right over into that adult phase. So you're either feeding for follicle growth or you're starving for animals that you'll never get, right? So, and that's the core message for this type of segment is make sure that you're not trying to think of how I can say this to where it actually makes sense. So you want to feed for success. So you want to make sure that your females are a little bit healthier than they normally need to be, because that will encourage more follicle growth versus starving out and killing off your project before it ever gets started. Because if the follicles aren't healthy enough or growing fast enough, then that animal that is even hatched out could be a slug, or it could be an extremely low birth weight or a defective hatchling. So, and that's not what we want, right? For number 3, successful pairings and breedings. And I think as new breeders, this is the one that is the most challenging because there's so much variability and flexibility when it comes to the size of the animals, the timing when you pair them, and then how long it takes for them for recognize what you think is an ovulation or an ovulation to the time that you get eggs, right? And that is the thing that troubles a lot of breeders, right? So the questions that we get around this is basically, why won't my snakes lock? What size do they need to be to breed? And are my eggs bad? Or how do I keep my eggs good? So I mean, this is a very complicated section. And of course, I have a video on this, on what to do at this stage, you know, when it comes to incubation, when it comes to pairing and things like that. And I mean, I'll put up to 2 videos, as a matter of fact, so that you can actually see them. But hey, man, let me tell you, the number one thing, if you don't take care of number 1 and 2, so if you don't buy a good breeding stock and you're not feeding healthy, you won't ever have to worry about this. You'll never get to that point to where your animals are feeling comfortable enough to either develop follicles or to breed. So the male has to feel very strong and being, you know, the male has to be able to breed, and the female has to have the follicles that are developed so that she's receptive to the pairing. So that is the number one thing that I think a lot of people are just falling short on, but it's also the timing, right? So I've stated before in how you can actually track the weight. So when the female is around 10 millimeters and you think that she's of the right size and right year, you could actually just put a male in there with her if you don't have an ultrasound, and you should see, not in the first month, but a second month, so it'd be like 2 pairings, that female will have an explosion in her weight gain, right? And with that explosion, you'll know that there's something going on. Now, if you have an ultrasound, you can just ultrasound the snake and see that it's at 10 millimeters, and that should help you out tremendously. But you definitely want to make sure that you're pairing up that male at least every 3 to 4 weeks with that female. I would say no more than that, because you can stress out both animals, right? The male can get stressed out and go off of food, which is what you don't want him to do. And so I've recommended the spa days for the males, where you actually, after you take them out from the female, wash off those female pheromones with a little bit of Dawn dish detergent, some soap and water. Just really wash them off before you put him back in his bachelor pad, which should be free of female pheromones, right? That's one way to keep him eating. But also, just during that time, to make sure that you're feeding your females a little bit more frequently, maybe a smaller feeder item. So if you feed her a medium rat normally, you might want to go to a small rat. If you're feeding every 10 days, normally go down to like every 7 days for that small rat, or maybe even every 5 days, depending on how hungry she is. She'll be able to do it because she's actually using more of those nutrients to grow those follicles, especially before 25 millimeters. Now, between 25 to 30 to 35 millimeters, that female should be going off of food, in which case her follicles are going into that vitellogenesis phase, to where there's more lipids, proteins, amino acids, everything is going into that follicle to get her to ovulation. So I know that's a lot, guys. I know that's a lot. And of course, I have a video right here. Everything that I make is a how-to video and to help you. But during this phase, one of the key things is to realize that if your snakes aren't pairing, then it might be a timing thing. It might be a conditioning thing. When it comes to the incubation, you can use a vermiculite solution, or you can use a water bath solution like we do. I like the water just because I don't want to waste products. I don't want to increase my waste. I'm already going through coconut husk and everything else. That's a different subject. But your incubation temperatures are key. So you want to make sure that your incubation temperatures are set and solid. Right now, I just replaced my heating coil. I just replaced my heating element. And so I'm just so glad we haven't had our clutches yet. Yeah, our clutches are a little bit delayed, even though it's March, almost April. We're still looking to have the same number of clutches. I just had to change it up because we're trying to move. So in going through all this, I didn't want to be transitioning my snakes, but that's a totally different story. But check this out. You want 88 to 90 degrees Fahrenheit for that incubation temperature, and you want to maintain humidity levels of 70 to about 85%, maybe even 90%, just to make sure that your snakes are viable. And the number one thing that you want in your incubator is you want airflow. So that's kind of like a redundant thing to me, because when I think about ball pythons, we put the saran wrap over the top to increase the humidity, but you still don't want stagnant air inside of the incubator. And you can, after about 30 days, you can vent the eggs so that there's more oxygen in there, because those eggs still need oxygen. And even though we put saran wrap on them, they're not 100% airtight unless you buy a gasket style tub. And then in that case, you might want to vent it after about 30 days so that your eggs are still receiving oxygen. I mean, everything needs oxygen to live, right? For number 4, after you get your eggs, or when you're anticipating them, I want you to think like this: sell with trust, not price. So as you're going into selling your ball pythons, if that's what you choose to do, and this is an option that's 100% up to you, what I would encourage you to do is to really try to produce the best animals that you have available and offer it to that customer, whether it's for a pet or a breeder, with all transparency. Now, in the beginning, you will make mistakes, but when you do, when that customer comes back and says, hey, this snake has an extra gene, which has happened to us, or my snake, I'm having a little bit trouble with it feeding, then you work with them, right? So, because in the transition from a ball python from your home to their home, there might be some issues. And then when you genetic test, if you do single test, then you might actually miss some of the genes because maybe you didn't know everything that was in the male and the female when you paired them. So when that happens, just really be thankful that the customer is even coming back to you, and let them know that you are going to make it right. So if they want you to send them another snake, I think that's a small thing. Or if they request a refund, that's a small thing, and it instills a lot of trust in the community. And the community, hey man, they know that you're a new breeder. When they see you just show up and they see that you're trying and they see you growing, they know that you're a new breeder. Like, I'm still a new breeder in the community, even though we have the channel. When it comes to actually selling snakes, I'm still a new breeder. I'm still trying to learn, so I'm still making mistakes. I want y'all to know that that doesn't stop to happen. Even at the highest levels, they still make some mistakes. But the best thing about the good examples is that when they do, or like when we do, we definitely try to make it right from the customer's viewpoint, because the customer is all that matters at that point. I mean, because let's face it, if I wanted to just keep all my snakes on my own customer, then there's nothing that will go wrong. But then I wouldn't probably be so over the top. Yes, I would. I would still be over the top on everything. That's just the way that I am. With my animals, I just want to know so much. But hey, man, I think that's one of the key things, is to make sure that you're selling with trust and not just price, guys. Because charging someone a lot for something, like I've said before, no one leaves the house to go to a reptile expo unless you're a breeder, and even breeders, with the intent on spending $1,000 for a snake. They just don't. They think that, hey, I'm gonna go to this reptile expo, I might get a snake, but I don't think a lot of people think that I'm going to spend $1,000 on a snake. Y'all let me know. And for number 5, and this is the last one, I promise, this is build projects and not collections. So remember, buying your breeding stock at the very beginning, don't buy with emotion. So don't buy because something is flashy and at a good price, or flashy at a high price, because that doesn't guarantee you anything. Secondly, you want to make sure that you're building up your future with your animals. You want to make sure that you are getting your hatchlings on food. You want to establish that feeding habit with your juveniles. You want to start building those fat reserves for the subadults, and for those adult females especially. You want to encourage them to grow those follicles. When you see that they're at 10 millimeters, or that they're getting close with additional feeding, so that they continue to have a good environment. When you go to incubating your eggs, then you want to make sure that that is a stable temperature, 88 to 90 degrees, 70 to 90%, 95 or 90, with 70 to 90% humidity levels, with airflow. But again, guys, pick your animals with the end in mind, and that way you'll be more focused, and you can have the animals that you only want, right? To have extra animals once you start breeding probably won't help you out a whole lot unless you just want a lot. Again, you can do whatever the hell you want to do. But when it comes to actual breeding projects and having a footprint in your home and feeding animals all the time, one of the things that I see that really hurts new breeders is they buy so many animals so fast without a thought of what specific projects they want to work. All right, so now that you watched part 2, just to recap on this video, remember we discussed raising your animals from hatchling and all the way up to adult, and why they need different things at different stages as you move from hatchling to juvenile, juvenile to subadult, subadult to adult. And then we also talked about choosing those projects. I mean, it's very important that you're choosing projects that don't oversaturate the market and provide you with an opportunity to differentiate yourself. Then also the next thing that we talked about was the successful pairings and the clutches, right? So those are something that are totally different. And very, very last, just marketing and selling your products. And then just one of the things that you got to remember when you go to market, you want to market with trust, not for price, right? So it's better if you establish trust no matter what level that you choose to enter the reptile hobby at, whether it's the pet level or the breeder level or the high-end collector level. Either way, you want to instill trust that your animals will provide that person with exactly what they need. And I think that's the big message from this series of videos. It's a two-part series. I know it's not really a series, it's just a 1 and a 2. But you want to be able to basically take your animals, produce some animals, and have someone else want them. But the most important person that I always say that needs to want these animals is you, because you're the one that's creating your dream. And I guarantee you, if you can create something that you're very enthusiastic about and that you're very passionate about, someone else will be too. And, you know, hey, that's it, guys. Let me know what you think. If you like this content, hit that like and subscribe button. A lot of people watch the videos and they don't subscribe. I mean, I guess it helps, but again, this is videos. These videos are set up to help you. So either way, I don't know how long I'll be making them, but hopefully this content will last throughout time so that if at any point someone is looking for this information, that they can find it. But hey, if nothing else, guys, enjoy that time that you spend with your reptiles like Danny over here. And definitely, man, love and cherish and let your family know that you love them while you have them. Thank you.